Welcome to this public demonstration of the CluedIn Data Hub. Now let's use our single sign-on provider given via Azure Active Directory to sign into the platform. And welcome to CluedIn. Everything I need to operationalize my data to get value and become data-driven is available within the Data Hub. As we can see, we've got these very easy to understand dashboards alerting us of things that we need to do. Let's head over to the integration section where we can see that we've already got a couple of integration points plugged into the system. So we've got things like file storage, notes, code, mail, we've got calendars, contacts, etc. Now I've been asked from our team to provide our business intelligence teams and our machine learning teams with some data. In this particular case, they would like to know all of the customers that we have and all of the information we have across the different systems on those customers. And they're going to provide some insights and intelligence from that. So let's add a brand new connector. Now, the first value of CluedIn really starts to shine through in the fact that it has over 200 pre-built integrations to platforms like Salesforce, to platforms like Microsoft Dynamics, and some even more modern platforms like some of the data lakes. Now, of course, we also have things like Oracle, SQL Server, etc. So in most cases, we've got you covered. Now, when I think about customers, I think about the CRM. Now, at CluedIn, we use HubSpot as our CRM. And all I need to do to start getting the value out of CluedIn is start to connect. Now, what you'll notice with CluedIn is that there's no need for these complex and tedious ETL designers. We don't need to know how the HubSpot system connects to the rest of the data. This is in fact the magic behind CluedIn. We're using a pattern we call eventual connectivity, which allows us to receive much higher precision in blending data from multiple different systems. Now, as you can see, the browser's actually already used the cookies on my machine to get the password, and I can just authenticate with HubSpot. Now, you can see the connection is made successfully. What CluedIn will do is go off and ask HubSpot what is the expected amount of data to come in to the system. Now, as you can see, we've got the classic things from a CRM. Deals, people, organizations, this is all looking good. In fact, I can always open these and actually take a look at what's expected from the data coming in. So I can see this is what the records look like. This gives me a good indication of, if in the future I've got any problems with new data types coming in or new formats, this is really where I can go to understand what CluedIn is going to ingest from that system. Now, as I click next, it's going to take me to my real-time settings where I can set up real-time webhooks or communication between the HubSpot system and CluedIn. So as soon as the new contact gets put into the CRM, it's pushed over to CluedIn. I can also set up permissions at this point. I can also set up data policies at this point as well, or I can just start ingesting the data. Now, considering that CluedIn uses Docker and Kubernetes as its orchestration framework, right now it's spinning up multiple different machines in the cloud to tackle this crawling and integration problem. So it's pulling the data in as fast as possible while still adhering to all of the throttling limits from the system. Now, in a few moments, the crawling is going to be finished and we're going to then head into the processing. But while I'm here, I can always set up some governance parts like the product owners, the data owners, etc. So my crawling seems to be finished, and I'll continue to get these types of notifications on the right-hand side telling me what's happening. So right now the data is being processed. Now, because we're using the cloud to do this and using the backbone of multiple different machines, you can see it doesn't take long for CluedIn to process all the data. And it starts to tell me of a few things that I can start doing with this data. One of the first things that we're met with here is the scores of the data. So CluedIn is scoring the raw HubSpot data on multiple different metrics, including things like accuracy, accountability, consistency, connectivity. Now you might notice that there's a couple of red flags here. This is indicating to me that the data that's come in falls below the acceptable thresholds that have been set by our business. Now, of course, as an administrator of CluedIn, I can always edit these thresholds and change them. I can also set thresholds using rules types of systems to do things like, in certain countries, I would like the accuracy to be this. Maybe if it's certain data such as customers or something like this, I can use a rules engine to basically set up the different thresholds of acceptable quality for the different parts of the business. Now this is great. Now that I have my data integrated, the next thing that we'll head over to is the catalog. Now if I head over to manipulation and catalog, you can see that I have a full catalog of all the data available to me from the different tools that are plugged into CluedIn. I get the property names and metadata information about those properties. In fact, I can always expand it out to see a little bit more details. I can search for things as well. So if I wanted to search for something like gender, you can see that, yes, there is a property here called user.gender. And if I expand out gender, I can see that the acceptable values that are in that field are male, female. That's something that our business has standardized on. So we can tackle this problem of what if it's a 0 or a 1 in another system? What if it's capital M or capital F? What if it's in other countries, languages? And really this is what stops a lot of businesses getting value out of data is the fact that, at the BI team and the machine learning team are usually the ones that have to do this cleaning and standardizing of data. So now that I've got my data blended, now that I've got it cataloged and integrated, let's have another look at a view. What if I wanted to look something like, marketing? Here is my catalog, detailed catalog of everything that exists across our business that involves marketing. Now you might see that if I look at some of these records, that it's got multiple different icons associated with it. This is because CluedIn has done the blending of records across the different sources all for me. Now I have a full search here where I can drag and drop, or I can filter down by things like, I want presentations. I want the presentations that have come from maybe something like Office 365. So that full ability to discover data. Let's drill into this full record. And we can see that not only are we met with the actual file and we can drill through the file, but if we head over to the metadata view, we can see a full catalog of all the metadata that has come from the different systems. In fact, I can also look at the history of this metadata as well. So for traceability and lineage of where we got our data and how has it changed over time and who has changed it, who has seen it, this view gives you that ability to get that power. So now that we have integrated data, now that we have blended and catalog data, let's head over to some of those notifications that came through when I added the HubSpot system. Now you might see that some of the records here are giving me links. One is telling me that I have a new data set to train. One is saying that I have a new data set available for cleaning. Now, because I was scoring the HubSpot data on the multiple different quality metrics, what CluedIn's going to do is all records that fall below the acceptable threshold that we set as the business, that will get loaded up in an interface we call CluedIn Clean. Now, CluedIn Clean will pull the data that needs to be cleaned, and it will give me the ability in this tabular view to run data operations on it. So let's take something as simple as this field here, the HubSpot contact lifecycle stage. Now, what we can use is use these simple drop-down features to run a text faceting or a clustering or a grouping. And over on the left-hand side, you'll see that I have some denormalized data here. So for example, something that's relatively easy to spot is that, well, I have a spelling mistake in my data here. If I click Edit, and then I'll change this to T and apply, you can see that CluedIn's going to automatically apply that new value to the data, and it's going to regroup it. So now we can say that we're happy with the fact that we have more normalized data. Now, what would happen if this was 30,000 different choices? You can see I only have 7 choices that are available here. Well, I can use this clustering feature here, and I can use different techniques of matching. So in this case, I'm using a sounds like technique. And you can see that CluedIn has said, hey, opportunity, opportunity, 1p, 2p's. Hey, I can actually automatically merge those for you into the correct record. So then I can say merge selected and closed. Now once again, it's going to go off, it's going to clean that data, and now we have that available in a more normalized fashion. Now there are some other things I can clean here. So for example, it looks like someone has put in a kind of more of an acronym version of marketing qualified lead. Now, I can go off and I can clean that. Let's leave that for a little bit later. Now one of the other notifications that we saw was there was some data to train. So let's click on that. So there are multiple different ways that I can train my data. Let's just take something like increasing the accuracy of my data. Now, what you'll notice here is an interface we call CluedIn Train. Now, CluedIn Train is targeted towards data stewards and data citizens, so they can play a role in curating of data. Now, in this case, I'm asked multiple different simple questions, right? Yes, no, or skip are the types of responses that I can give. Now, CluedIn, we are using reinforcement learning to essentially train our system to get better at understanding your specific data. And over here, you can actually see that the reason why I'm being asked this is that I am 3 hops away from this data, i.e., think of it like a big LinkedIn or Facebook network. How close am I to this data? And obviously, the closer I am, the more relevant I am to clean and label that data. But you can also see that Pierre and Martin have also been sent the same question. So this is really about gaining a statistical confidence in our labeling of our data. So in this case, you can see it's asking me, I found some content in the HubSpot data. And this could have come from mail or activity or notes. And it's asking me, well, is Silicon Valley a location? Yes, it is. Is Silicon Valley a location? Well, you might be asking yourself, you were just asked that question. And this really highlights the main value of CluedIn Train. It's about applying machine learning techniques to cleaning and raising the overall quality of your data. And the idea being that if we train this enough on understanding Silicon Valley, if it saw another location like maybe Brisbane in Australia, well, it wouldn't have to ask anyone about that because it's used this statistical training to learn what it looks like to be a location. So in this case, we're yes. In this case, we're not an organization. Silicon Valley is not an organization. Apple is an organization. You get the idea. And I can always persist this training session to help CluedIn Engine get smarter over time. Now, all this good, integrated, blended, high quality, labeled, clean data would still not be of a lot of value if I couldn't govern it. So let's head over to our governance section. You can see that I've got my overall global scores for accuracy across all the business. In fact, I can expand this out. I can see in detail that, well, we have this blended line. So this is basically the data that or the records that we've blended from the multiple different systems, and we can always see individual records, and we can scroll through these as well. Now, if I just minimize that for a moment, imagine that you're wanting to now send this data to the business intelligence and to the machine learning teams. Now, I would want to make sure that I am compliant and that I'm not sending data to those teams that could be breaking any legislation or regulations. So let's head over to the policy sections. And I've got 2 mechanisms here. I've got rules and restrictions. Rules allow me to set flags on data. So if I see certain personal data, I might want to flag it to someone or notify them. Restrictions are essentially that if we see this type of data, CluedIn will not send it on to any of the consumers. So it won't send it on to the BI team. It won't send it on to the machine learning team. Actually, one of the complexities that we often see in this is that, well, you kind of have to be a specialist in governance and in compliance to really understand what you can do or not do with data. So CluedIn has shipped out of the box with the most popular of legislations and regulation mappings. So things like GDPR in EU, things like the new CCPA in the US, HIPAA, PCI DSS compliance. And we've mapped what type of data, whether it's high risk or personally identifying, that we will flag out of the box. So even things like job titles, things like mentions of people in unstructured data. This is something that we provide out of the box. However, I can always add my own policies as well. So for example, in this case, I probably don't want to send any information upstream to the business intelligence team or the machine learning team that maybe has some type of, in some type of industry. So for example, I might want to add a rule, and this rule will call something like banking. So let's just make up a situation where, well, even though we have customers in the finance industry, we're under regulation here to not sell to anyone in that industry. So in this particular case, I'm going to search for filtering on organizations. Now I have a stage here. Now, this allows you to subscribe to data at different parts of the pipeline of CluedIn. So for example, if I wanted to set up a policy that was watching data after it had scored the data, its metrics, or after it had done its fuzzy merging of records, I can subscribe at that particular stage. Now in this particular case, because I want to send the richest type of information to the BI and to the machine learning team, I'm going to subscribe to the last step, which is intelligence. Now I have my rules builder. So I can pick a rule. In this case, we're going to do property matching. And this next filter is enabled with our catalog. So as I type something like industry, you can see that it's actually given me a catalog of here are all the properties that you have in your catalog to be able to search on that contain industry. Now, I could build a rule for every single property that we have here using a if glassdoor.organization.industry is banking, or if HubSpot.contactIndustry is, or I could use this core vocabulary from CluedIn that's done all the mapping for me. So if I click industry.organization or organization.industry, I can say if it's equal to banking, then I have some type of operation. So I might want to do something like mask the data. I might want to apply a new value. I might want to remove the data. This is how we can add policies to the stream of data that we're sending out to the business. Now that we've got governed data, now that we've got clean data, now that we've got a process around raising the quality of our data, now that it was very simple to integrate our data, let's use it. So let's head over to our consume section. Now there are multiple different ways you can consume data with CluedIn. One of the ways that we really love and recommend is through streams. So as I go to streams, I'm going to go over and I'm going to create a stream. And I'm going to call this customer data. Now I get to subscribe to a certain part of the processing stage of CluedIn. Now of course, like before, I want to get everything that CluedIn can do. So edging, deduplication, normalization, clean. So I'm going to pick this last stage here. Now I want to build up my rules, so we're going to send out customers. So in my case, I know that the flag I need to be set is for a property match. And considering that we use HubSpot, I'm looking for where the HubSpot deal stage is equal to or has ever been equal to closed won. So that flag allows me to filter by all the customers that I have at CluedIn. Now, I have some actions here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick an action which is export and stream to external services. Now, just like I integrated HubSpot before, I can also authenticate and integrate with targets. In this case, I've already authenticated to a few. One of those being Power BI, which is the business intelligence tool we use here at CluedIn. So once I've clicked on that, I can click Save, and CluedIn's going to do all the work to create the stream and then send that data over to Power BI for the business intelligence team to start playing with. In fact, I can actually see what is the quality of the data coming out of this particular stream. Not only that, but I can actually see, well, here is the data. Here are your customers. I can change some settings if I want, and I can also set particular policies on restricting certain data at this stream level as well. Now, if I head over to Power BI and just refresh the screen, if I just search for my customer data, yes, you can see that I now have my data available in Power BI. It's set to type streaming, and now my business intelligence team can start to build visualizations off this. Now, the great thing is, because this is streaming, if I was to clean the data and raise the quality more in CluedIn, CluedIn's going to do all the work to push and update this customer data set so that we're always working with the richest live data. Now let's do the same for the machine learning team. And what I'm wanting to show you is that really the same amount of work that's necessary to push the data to Power BI is the same that we would for something like Azure ML. So at Azure ML, we use different techniques to be able to get value with machine learning. If I head back to my consumption section, I'm going to go back to consume, to streams, and I'm going to create a brand new stream. I'm also just going to call it customer data. I want to enrich everything, so I'm going to subscribe at the last stage in the pipeline of CluedIn's processing. And I kind of want the same thing. I want organizations where the deal stage has ever been equal to closed won. But my action this time is going to be export stream, but I'm going to send this to Azure ML. So if we click Save, same type of thing. It's now going to send the data over to Azure ML so that my machine learning team can start working with it. And as I clean data and CluedIn, that data will always be streamed over to make sure that data set in Azure ML is always up to date. So if I head over to my data sets, great. I now have a customer data set that my machine learning team can start to use to get value out of. So I hope that gives you a high-level idea of what CluedIn helps solve. First of all, we easily integrated data without any ETL processing or big designers that are time-consuming and very hard to achieve value out of in reality. We showed you how we can help prepare the data by scoring the data on different metrics, but then also using CluedIn to find where the dirty data was and load that up for different people to be able to consume. You also saw that we used the CluedIn train interface to label our data and to use augmented analytics so that data stewards and data curators could also play a role in the overall quality of data. We then looked at our governance section where we could apply data policies and restrict certain data from going to downstream consumers. We then pushed this data over to Power BI, to the business intelligence team, and to the machine learning team to help them with their work. Now, the great thing is that those teams didn't have to do any of the blending. They didn't have to do any of the cleaning or the labeling or the governance. They didn't have to worry about compliance or consent or regulations around what data they can use and what they can't. This is something all managed by the CluedIn Data Hub. Now, the great thing is now I have a full process in place to increase the overall quality of data throughout my business and make sure that all consumers at any point are always working with high quality data. Thanks for spending the time with me.